Well, happy Black and Gold Overtime Monday. I'm Andrew Clay, Riley Holsinger in studio for this beautiful rainy Monday here in central/western PA. We're getting to Black and Gold Overtime a little bit later than normal. We usually do this the day after the game, but the Steelers played on a Thursday night football. It was a 33-31 loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. A really interesting game that, well, maybe the Steelers, maybe Mike Tomlin has a reason to fear Joe Flacco, because no one seems to live rent-free in Mike Tomlin's head like Joe Flacco. And I think Flacco paid a few more months' rent last week.
Absolutely. I think probably Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin should just go ahead and sign Joe Flacco ahead of next season, because over the past two times that the Steelers have faced Flacco, he's dissected this Pittsburgh defense. And it's really frustrating if you're a Steelers fan, because it's Joe Flacco. Like, it's nobody special. This isn't Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or even Joe Burrow beating you. It's 40-year-old Joe Flacco, who's really on the last legs of his career and doesn't play well against many other teams in the NFL. But for some reason, he could still figure out a way to play well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think it was an embarrassing loss all around. I think it looks poorly on Mike Tomlin. I think it looks poorly on Terrell Austin, Andrew.
Chase Brown ran roughshod through this defense.
Yeah.
I have no idea how that happens. Chase Brown had been averaging like 33 yards a game.
Yeah.
And he goes for 100 plus. I don't know how the defense could be that soft against the Bengals when you kind of knew what to expect. You knew short passes. You knew that they were going to get the ball to Jamar Chase. I don't understand. I just don't understand how a defense that's supposed to be this talented could be that bad against the Bengals.
Yeah, listen, I understand like the complaints that it seemed like the pass rush was non-existent all game. Well, the whole reason for that was because Joe Flacco was getting rid of the ball really quickly, like how we saw from Aaron Rodgers earlier in the season. Like, if you have a poor offensive line like Cincinnati has, that's the one way that you're going to kind of try and mitigate what the defense is trying to do to you. That's the one way that you're trying to limit what TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig can do to your offensive line there by getting rid of the ball quickly. But the Steelers should have known their plan was to get the ball to Jamar Chase. He had 20-some targets in this game, never really made an adjustment. And whenever I go back to that point that I made earlier about how this was an embarrassment to the Steelers, because in the offseason, there was so much talk about acquiring guys like Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay to add to your cornerback room that already featured Joey Porter Jr., to have this group that can combat the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, this is the whole reason why you got these guys in the offseason. That's what they were saying. They were doing it to try and slow down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And whatever the Steelers threw out there, they threw the kitchen sink at the Bengals coverage-wise. The Bengals just pretty much tore them apart. Joe Flacco tore them apart right off the bat. I just don't know if it was more of a disguise thing, that it wasn't disguised well enough that Joe Flacco was able to tear them apart. Is it the case that Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay and Joey Porter Jr. aren't as good as what Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin thought? That's a possibility too. Like, there are so many factors that play into why Joe Flacco was able to have success, and each of them play a little bit of a role, whether if it's schematics, coaching, or talent. All of them were an issue on Thursday's game.
I think it's important to point out, like, playing defensive back is really hard in the NFL.
Especially against Jamar Chase.
And you can't, I don't care, I'm going to say this, I don't think there is one corner in the NFL. I'm going to say there's 0 to 1 corner in the NFL that can truly guard Jamar Chase one-on-one and be a lockdown guy. It's hard to play defensive back, right? You don't know where the route's going. You don't know what the play is called. Everything you do as a defensive back is reactionary to what's unfolding in front of you. And when you have a supreme athlete like Jamar Chase, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
But it was so bullish of Pittsburgh to just not really adjust to just stopping Jamar Chase. There should have been a point in this game where Mike Tomlin looked and said, I don't care who touches the ball. It just isn't going to be number one.
Yeah.
You take Ramsey off. You could have probably lived with Ramsey on an island on T. Higgins and then doubled up Jamar Chase and been more effective that way. Just at some point, and I know they said, oh, well, when we defended Jamar Chase, when we doubled up Jamar Chase, the slot receiver, that third wide receiver whose name I did not want to pronounce last week.
You're good. I'll say it. Andre Yosavash.
That guy, right?
Yeah.
They said, well, he got open. Great. You can live with number 80 beating you. It's one of those things where you say, make someone else beat us, and then the Steelers seem scared of letting someone else beat them. And you know what? They just let Jamar Chase get over 20 targets and just tear him to shreds. It was just an embarrassing for a defensive-minded head coach, for a team that's got more money in their defense than anyone else in the NFL, and for a team that said, we literally handpicked these guys to stop these guys, and those guys said, bet.
Yeah, maybe you should have picked some younger guys. Like, no offense to Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slade. They just aren't at the points that they previously were in their careers. Like, back when these guys were in their primes, I have no doubt that they probably would have been able to cover the Jamar Chases and T. Higgins of the world, especially Jalen Ramsey, who is arguably one of the top corners that this league has seen in a long, long time, to go along with the likes of like a Richard Sherman, if you want to throw another name out there. But even whenever they decided to double Jamar Chase with Jalen Ramsey, like you said, Andrew, Andre Yosavash was the guy that beat them. T. Higgins was the guy that beat them. Except for the one play that really frustrated me is that you're going to double up with Jalen Ramsey on Jamar Chase there. You have Chuck Clark moving from the safety position down on to cover him, and it was press coverage. Yosavash was on Slay in the slot, and right off the bat, Yosavash beat him, had a free release pretty much to just run a go route there. And Chuck Clark, because his responsibility, his role was to double cover Jamar Chase, he just ran right past a streaking Andre Yosavash for that really big play over the middle that Yosavash was able to have against the Steelers there. Like, that's the areas that it frustrates me, because your responsibility there was double covering Chase, and you just let a wide open receiver just run right past you. Like, that play, if the ball was thrown better, that could have been a long touchdown for Cincinnati, but it didn't really matter anyway, because whatever they wanted to do, they were able to march down the field. Joe Flacco was able to dissect this team, unlike how many other quarterbacks are able to do. But it really frustrated me because of the arrogance that comes out in the comments with Tomlin talking about how this is the group that is going to be set to stop the Bengals. How I asked Terrell Austin earlier in the week how if there was anything he could learn from facing Joe Flacco last year and how he wanted to attack this team. And he says no. Like, it's that arrogance that frustrates me. Like, you can learn something every single time you're out there. You can always learn something new on tape. And yet the Steelers just could not adjust in that game to save themselves. I like the sound effect.
We give Riley a round of applause because that is as fiery of a Riley Holsinger as I have ever seen.
Yeah, right, no, it's just a joke.
The mild-mannered Riley Holsinger is fired up this morning, and I applaud it.
Yeah, no, maybe it's the lack of sleep. Maybe it's waking up at 5 a.m. and trying to go back to sleep for a couple hours. But no, I'm fired up because the Steelers could have had a chance to really take the AFC North, go ahead and put that division almost to rest with a big win on Thursday night whenever you have Baltimore at 1-5, Cleveland at the moment 1-5 on the season, Cincinnati without Burrow and struggling. Like, you could have put the division to bed and really padded your lead, but the Steelers failed to do that, and Tomlin's struggles on Thursday night just linger on. Seven divisional losses on the road on a Thursday night.
Yeah, you mentioned the pass rush not being effective. I'm with you. You know, the Bengals planned for that. The Bengals played away from that pass rush. But that's where you have to adjust as the Steelers. And I thought they did a really poor job all game long adjusting. I don't think doubling Jamar Chase should have been a job for Jalen Ramsey.
No,
you let your best corner go work an island on someone else. I think there was there was just an arrogance. There was a cockiness that the Steelers thought they could tame this, and they just couldn't. Straight up, they could not tame these Bengals wide receivers in this Bengals passing game. And then when you let the running attack just absolutely gash you. And I'll tell you what, that's where the Steelers, what happened there? Like, I thought that was inexcusable what they allowed on the run.
Yeah, it's frustrating too because they had back-to-back really good performances in stopping the run. I believe they limited both Cleveland and Minnesota to under 60 yards on the ground there. So it's kind of frustrating for Pittsburgh to kind of go back to what it looked like in weeks 1 and 2 whenever they were facing off against the Jets and the Seahawks there. And if your pass rush isn't able to get home with guys like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, like, you better bet that they need to be focused on stopping the run whenever Cincinnati decides to run the ball. And Pittsburgh just wasn't able to do that. A lot of people thought this run defense was fixed whenever Derek Harmon got healthy. And he's been really good so far in his rookie year. But just for some reason against Cincinnati, Pittsburgh just wasn't able to stop the run. And I really can't put a finger on why they weren't able to. Maybe it was just because they had so much dedicated in the back end of their secondary that the box was just lighter than normal.
While we're lighting up this Steelers defense, one more before break. Where are we at on Joey Porter?
It's frustrating because his rookie year, he looked really good. He had really good moments in his rookie year. He really was under Pat Peterson's wing, where I thought, you know what, that was a good thing for Joey to have a veteran leader there to help him out. But, man, over the past 2 years, it's been rough for Joey. Hopefully, maybe a guy like Darius Slay can take on a little bit more of that mentorship role if he's not going to be producing on the field, and hope that he can help kind of like teach him up a little bit here and help him figure out his mistakes. But it just hasn't been good for Joey as of late.
It really has been a tough road for the Steelers defense. When we come back, I want to flip to the other side of the ball, and this is where Riley and I are gonna differ a little bit in opinions. Let's talk about that on the other side of the break. You're watching Black and Gold Overtime. Back here on Black and Gold Overtime, Andrew Clay, Riley Holsinger with you today. We're talking Steelers and Bengals. Pittsburgh lost 33-31 on Thursday. 31 points. It was a good output by the Steelers offense. It's not a very good Bengals defense.
Yeah.
But it was a good output. Jaylen Warren, I think, was just shy of a career high, or did he get his career high?
He would have been right around it for total yards, I believe, but it was his third career 100-yard rushing game. Really good. His best game of the season, more than 100 yards on 16 carries from Warren. At times, the running game was phenomenal for the Steelers throughout that game.
Yeah, this is one of those times I thought Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin had a heart-to-heart somewhere there in the third quarter when the Steelers clearly couldn't stop the Bengals, and you just take the air out of the ball. They could have kept running the ball and taken the ball out of the Bengals' hands a little bit. And I thought that would have helped the Steelers a little bit, but you can't argue with the. It's hard to argue with the results.
Yes, it's hard whenever you have 30 points to blame the offense, I feel like. And we can have this discussion right off the bat, Andrew, here, because Pat Freiermuth scored the touchdown with a little more than 2 minutes left in the game there. Like, could there have been the conversation? I think he was in his full right there to score, but some people on social media believe that he should have just slid down at the one there and had the Steelers drain some of the clock because of how the Bengals were working on offense. Now, granted, Joe Flacco moved the ball downfield as quickly as he wanted to on that final drive there. Like, he didn't have any issues at all. But do you think Pat made the right decision there by scoring?
Can I tell you what I think about those people who think he should have slid down?
You can say whatever.
I think they're idiots.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between what Pat Freiermuth's situation was and what T. Higgins' situation was. And that is T. Higgins needed a field goal.
Yep.
Pat Freiermuth needed a touchdown.
I completely agree.
You can slide down inside the 10-yard line and be like, we're in great situation to kick a field goal, right? Because you are. There's nothing guaranteed about scoring in the end zone. How many times did the Patriots turn it over inside their own 1-yard line a couple weeks ago?
Oh, it was at least a couple. You had
Twice.
the Stevenson fumble and the Eccles interception. Yeah.
There's nothing guaranteed about a touchdown. Scoring a touchdown in the NFL is incredibly hard. And it can be incredibly hard to move the ball inside the 3-4 yard line. It can be incredibly hard to run the ball when everyone is expecting you to run it up the middle. Now, look, could you have scored a touchdown and gone down? Yeah, you could have. But if you had a chance to get the points, imagine what we would be doing here if Pat Freiermuth would have slid down inside the 5-yard line and then there would have been a fumbled snap, a fumbled exchange. What would we have been saying?
No, everybody would be ripping Pat for his decision to slide down and stop. They would have said score while you had the chance and everything.
If the Steelers would have needed a field goal, I would be in the camp of maybe Pat should have gone down. But you needed a touchdown, and that's never given.
And it's
hard. Did the right thing.
How much time are you going to really drain off of the clock there if you slide within the 1-yard line? Probably not that much. You might get the clock down to the 2-minute warning, but other than that,
I think the Bengals had 2 timeouts too.
Yeah, and before we talk a little bit more about the offense here, how about after they scored there, and you know that they've targeted Jamar Chase 20 times in this game. And that one big play that Cincinnati had to set up that field goal, Jamar Chase is running on a crosser. Like, nobody was within like 10, 15 yards of him on that play. Like, that was just kind of ridiculous there.
No, they went into zone, and it wasn't even a match zone.
No.
They just flat out zone, and Chase runs across the middle. I think, going back to what you said earlier in the show, I think a lot of it came down to the Steelers do not disguise what they're doing.
Yeah.
They step up to the line of scrimmage, and they said, hey, our 11's better than your 11. Come at me. And the Bengals said, okay, we'll come at you. And it's so apparent that that's their mindset when you hear guys like Chase after the game saying, we knew what they were doing all the time. Like, we knew what to expect. You hear guys like Julian Edelman saying it a couple weeks ago, like, we loved playing the Steelers because we always knew what to expect. We always knew what they were doing. They were going to play the defense the same way they had played it the week before and the game before, and every other time we've ever seen them. And I don't think the Steelers worry much about disguising what they're doing. They just broadcast, hey, this is the defense we're in. Let's see if you can beat it. And a guy like Joe Flacco, he's going to beat you.
Yeah.
He's an experienced guy. He knows, hey, look, they're in cover 3 zone. I bet I get a guy like Jamar Chase, about 10 yards out over across the middle, and he's going to be wide alone. And he was.
Yeah. No, he's faced them 25 times or so in his career. So it makes sense there. But it's funny that you bring up Edelman because whenever I saw that crosser in real time, it just gave me PTSD and flashbacks of all of those Brady and Patriot teams that just love to hit Gronkowski over the middle on crossing routes in Pittsburgh. Just was never really able to stop them there at all. But yeah, just an embarrassment all around on the defensive side of the ball. I know we backtracked there. We wanted to talk about offense, but that was just one of the pivotal plays of the game that we didn't mention.
I agree, and I'm glad you brought us back to that. But back onto the offense. It is hard to argue with the results, but I still have deep concerns about this Steelers offense. I thought in a game in which Aaron Rodgers had all time in the world to throw, he played well. But I still worry about Aaron Rodgers when he can't throw his first read. I look at a couple plays specifically in that game, and I can't remember if it was Darnell or Jonnu who caught this one ball on the sideline. And it was coming towards me, so I believe it was the second quarter. And so Rodgers had all day, and he danced around the pocket, and then he ended up rolling to the Steelers sideline and fired like a 7 or 8 yard dart right on the sideline to Jonnu Smith. Got a medium gain, fine, whatever. It was a toe touch. But if you go back and watch that play, there were 3-4 guys at different times wide open on the other side of the formation. And I've been really bothered, and I felt this way in camp, that when I watched him, even against air, he wasn't very quick to jump off his first option, and he wasn't very quick to process what was in front of him. I worried about it in camp. I worried about it now. I've seen it all season long, and when he hasn't had time, he's been under a lot of pressure. It's why he checks down so quickly. I don't think he's comfortable going to his second or third read. He is a one read or check down player this year. And the Connor Hayward overthrown the end zone. We had Pat Freiermuth across the middle of the field wide open.
Yeah. I mean, Connor probably could have had
that. But that's why
ball.
You shouldn't be throwing to Connor Hayward in that situation.
He was open in the end zone.
He was
open. Hit his hands.
He was open-ish.
It hit his hands. If it hits your hands, you better haul it in.
But Connor Hayward is a blocking back.
I mean, he's on an NFL roster for a reason. He can catch passes. He's an NFL tight end.
There is too much Darnell. There is too much Connor Hayward. They're getting too cute trying to get Darnell Washington involved in the game. Too cute.
I mean, it worked on the touchdown really well.
But that wasn't necessarily a cute play. That was just a play. The cute play I'm talking about is the screen pass.
Yeah.
What makes you think Darnell Washington is a guy you want running an open field?
I can agree with that play there. I don't think you should throw the ball to Darnell Washington 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
No.
But he works really well in those passes that you can throw it to him out in space and just let him maul a guy.
What happened? Yeah. What happened last week when he was in open space?
I mean, he can hurdle people. He can run people over.
He can get run down and the ball can get punched out like that happened last week.
I think Darnell's a heck of a player there. And you know what? Last week it happened out of bounds, so it didn't really matter.
No, it didn't. But imagine,
I thought it's hard to complain with the offense though.
No,
because
it is.
And with Rodgers, I disagree because he's been the best Steelers quarterback since probably before late stage elbow surgery Big Ben out there. He's brought new life to this offense here. It doesn't look as putrid as it did with Russell Wilson under center, with Kenny Pickett.
I agree.
Mitch Trubisky. And like there are still flashes. Like we saw what Aaron Rodgers can do when you give him time, like that touchdown pass that he threw to Jonnu, or the smarts that Aaron Rodgers has too, because the 2 touchdowns to Pat Freiermuth, they were both the same play. And he talked about it a little bit afterward, where he saw something in the coverages that Cincinnati was showing. I believe it was on the specific formation. And he told Pat, he's like, hey, Pat, if they go with this look, I'm going to be looking at you here, do this, because he saw something in the coverages that broke down, and it worked for 2 touchdowns. Like, Rodgers still brings that level of intelligence to the Steelers offense that, frankly, I don't think many other quarterbacks in the NFL could still bring out there, because they are too green behind the ears and haven't seen the types of things that Aaron Rodgers can see, like those little things that can make a difference out there for an offense, and did for the Steelers almost.
I agree. I agree that Rodgers has been very good. He's been the best quarterback since late stage Ben Roethlisberger. I just still worry that when he can't throw his first route, he's just checking down, and against really good defenses that can take away that first option, I think they're going to run into a lot more trouble on offense like we saw through the first really 5 games of the season. So I still worry about this offense, but it is hard to complain about the results. Aaron Rodgers had a nice
we
game.
can complain about his 2 interceptions, though. The one was fluky. I'm not going to put that on him. That's more of a DK. Like, it hits your hands.
That was super fluky.
It's a fluky pick. But the other one, you're thrown right into double coverage there. Like, those 2 interceptions there pretty much cost Pittsburgh the game, other than what they did on defense, because that led to 10 points for the Bengals.
Well, let's head to break one more time quick. Let's look forward outside of the break. You're watching Black and Gold Overtime. Back here for just another couple minutes here on Black and Gold Overtime. Steelers now looking ahead. They're going to be at home on Sunday Night Football to take on the Green Bay Packers. It is the revenge game of revenge games this year. And ironically, much like Aaron Rodgers' tenure, Green Bay doesn't have good wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely. They just have a lot of secondary guys here. But I know Aaron Rodgers is probably really looking forward to being able to play against Green Bay again. He's been very complimentary while in Pittsburgh about his time with the Packers. And he said it after week 1, too. Like, playing against the Jets, his former team from the past 2 years, it wasn't going to hit him as much as it probably would for him to play against Green Bay once again. So I'm interested to hear him talk about this week, about how much it's going to mean to him to play against his Packers once again.
Green Bay's offense has been up and downs at times this year. They only scored 13 points against Cleveland. They won yesterday 27-23. Trey McBride went off a 10-reception game. That has to feel good if you're the Steelers, because you're using tight ends more than pretty much anyone in the league right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pittsburgh had 4 touchdowns from its tight ends last week against Cincinnati there. And it's National Tight End Day on Sunday.
It is.
So you can always expect, I feel like, the tight ends to go off on National Tight Ends Day.
Can you?
Yeah, no, typically they always do really well on National Tight Ends Day. So I would expect them to probably get into the mix here. I would expect them to do well, because the Packers, that's been one of the areas that they've really struggled at this year in defensive coverage-wise, is trying to stop tight ends like Trey McBride and stuff. So I think the Steelers will be able to exploit some mismatches there in that side of the game on offense.
I do worry about the Steelers' ability to protect Aaron Rodgers in this game. Obviously, a guy like Micah Parsons is never easy to slow down.
Yeah.
And there's probably going to be some juice on this one. You know, Parson is a Pennsylvania native. He's a guy who's been watching the Steelers probably all his life. I imagine there's some juice there.
Yeah, 3 sacks. It was his best game of his career on Sunday against Arizona. Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be juice there, but I would expect Pittsburgh to do a lot of the same things they did against Cleveland, where they had Rodgers roll out, do some of those bootlegs and stuff. Just try and find different ways to get him away from Micah Parsons.
Well, that'll do it for this week's Black and Gold Overtime. Remember, we're back here every week after the Steelers play. For Riley Holsinger, I'm Andrew Clay. We'll see you next week after Packers and Steelers on Sunday Night Football.